Thanks for tuning in to The World We Want, the NAAEE podcast, a project of the North American Association for Environmental Education. If these episodes resonate with you, after the podcast, check out our website, which contains opportunities for professional development, resources for educators and administrators, and guidance on how you can incorporate environmental education into a broader teaching strategy. Visit us at NAAEE.org/podcast. And thanks for listening.
What do you love? What do you love? And oftentimes my students haven't had anybody ask them that when it doesn't involve, like, oh, that cute sorority girl over there or something like that. No, what do you love on this planet? Do you love the smell of rain? Do you love a certain pull of clouds? You've got to tell me what bird you love, that kind of thing. What trees do you love?
Today on The World We Want, we begin with a simple idea, noticing. Noticing as an active verb. Noticing as a way of moving through the world. Noticing as the beginning of curiosity, of care, and of loving the world around us. Hi, I'm your host, Gerry Ellis. And on this episode of The World We Want, my guest is Aimee Nezhukumatathil. Aimee is a poet whose work invites us to slow down, to pay attention, to notice the color of a bird's wing, the sound of a frog's voice at night, the small living details that most of us pass by without a second thought. Her writing moves between science and poetry, between naming and wonder, between the deeply personal and the beautifully universal. In her newest collection, Night Owl, she turns her attention to the world after dark, a space that for many of us feels unfamiliar. But for Aimee, it's alive with sound and imagination and possibility. Our conversation is about what it means to stay open to the world, to remain curious, to remember what we loved as children, and rediscover and help our students rediscover our connection to place within the living community around us. So let's begin there, this time on The World We Want with Aimee Nezhukumatathil. Hi, Aimee, and welcome to The World We Want. We are so delighted to have you kicking off our second season.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
You've got a new book coming out called Night Owl, and we're going to talk about that and talk about some of your previous work. And I'm excited to dig into all of it because so much of it hits at my own heart, as I feel like I'm a little 8-year-old boy wandering through the world with exploding curiosity all the time. But the thing that one notices immediately when reading any of your work is noticing is such an active verb for you. It's like it just kind of glows from everything you do. And so I wanted to ask you, what have you noticed today?
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, gosh, that question is right up my alley. I just came out from, partially while I was running here a little bit, I was finding my headphones, and then I have a little rescue chihuahua who would not come in. It was like she knew, oh, you have to do something. I'm going to just lollygag a little bit longer. But while she was doing that, I noticed that we have this incredible vine here that signals the start of spring, and it's called Carolina jessamine. And just over the weekend, it's suddenly like the buds are green, and then they're swollen to full on yellow. In the next day or so, there are going to be these yellow trumpets on the vine. And I'm so excited because hummingbirds love them, bees love them. It's native here to the South. And that is they say once that blooms, you could start planting. And I'm so excited about that, but I'm also horrified because that usually at the earliest happens early April. And this is, it's very early here. So, and there's other markers like the red buckeye that also has flowers on it. That's supposed to also signal when the red buckeye has flowers. You could set out your hummingbird feeders because hummingbirds are due to come back in the next week or so. Those sprouted this past weekend. I mean, the blooms opened this past weekend. So I'm so excited because, spring and summer are my favorites. And at the same time, very nervous, and this should not be happening in the month of, at least this early in March, that kind of thing. So just off the top of my head, that was from the backyard this morning.
There's that boundary between science and the joy of what you see, the nature of what you see, and what you were just describing with this kind of harbinger of spring and it being early dips into the science part of it, but then the joy of just seeing that bud. And I wanted to ask you, for you, when you're writing or even imagining before it even becomes scribbled words on a page and it's dancing in your brain, does the science come first? Does the poetry come first? Does the awe and wonder? I mean, which one drives which? And is it the same all the time, or?
Yeah. I love this question because it's, I think it's a common thought, especially for nature writers, where others think, I just walk around feeling awe and wonderment all the time, And I think, one, I'm here to dispel that notion. Spoiler alert, I do not. But when it comes to writing, I love just taking notes. I always say Mother Nature is the best poet, and I'm just trying to take notes from that. And what I mean by that is, I want to get see if I could describe the exact shade of violet on the wing of a crow, or the sound, if I can capture that sound somehow on the page. I always start with images first. So for me, images are not just visual, but the texture, the taste, not of wildlife, but all of the five senses. And then it's only after kind of writing, really trying to render that on the page, then I realize, oh, this reminds me of this. This reminds me of this, and that's when I go into metaphor. So rather than the opposite, where I think sometimes people think poets, nature writers walk around almost like with a metaphor basket, like, let me see what I could get today and put in my metaphor basket. That's absolutely not what I do in the slightest. But I just love taking notes, and some of it goes into a poem, some of it doesn't. I just love journaling and remembering what I noticed that day, who I was with, that kind of thing. And then sometimes poetry and essays come out of that. Sometimes they don't.
Walking around with a notebook is a very scientific thing to do as well, and taking notes. I mean, you think about some of the great naturalists of past times and today and in past, and they've left us with these amazing journals.
Yeah,
of what, in some cases, of what they just saw in their backyards every day. Their or extended backyards, and that's one of the things that I wondered about. I come from a documentary background of filmmaking and photography, and I was thinking over the weekend about our conversation today, and I was thinking, if I was following you around, what would you be scribbling? What would I be trying to film you taking a note about this or taking a note about that? Is it a mental process, or are you actually do you have a notepad and you sit for a moment and scribble notes?
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I mean, it depends on, if I'm out hiking, I'm thinking this past summer we were in the Tetons and Yellowstone, and I was on full on bear alert, trying to make sure. So there are no notebooks there. I'm just keeping as alert as possible. And it's a different kind of being alert and aware of your surroundings, that kind of thing. Sometimes I do, I always, walk around with a little notebook, a little pen. I try as much as possible to not take pictures when I'm out, because I really want it to be, unless it's something that I'm trying to think, what is my litmus test? If something's moving, maybe I try to take a video of it. But if it's still, and I want to capture the motion and they're gone, that kind of thing, then the way like a salamander or the way a blue-tailed skink will just shimmy. Maybe I'll take like a 3-second video. Otherwise, I really just try to remember it or to write it in a notebook. And as far as what someone might be seeing, I mean, you'll see just like it's almost embarrassing. Almost everything I do is in color. I mean, literally and figuratively. So I'm always trying to capture colors down, inventing new colors. If I have a big enough bag that I'm brought my colored pencils with, I try to do sketches. Um, and I don't know what it is. It's something about color. I could almost do shorthand with color, and I'll remember what that or what that fern looked like. If I could just say, "Oh, it was celery green underneath, and then spotted with burnt umber on the top," I'll remember. That'll be more helpful to me than saying this fern was about the length of my hand. That kind of thing. Like, I don't know. There's something about color that if I can render color or if I can render smell, those are the two things. If I can color, render, or smell, those are the two things that I could take back with me and write about, years later even.
Color's an interesting one. Do you find that in English, it just feels inadequate to describe the range of colors, the wealth of colors that we have in this world?
Oh, yeah. 100%. I mean, I'm always so jealous of the animals. I'm sure things like octopus and various shrimps under the ocean, um, on the ocean floor have many more color combos than what the human eye could process. So in another lifetime, I would love to come back as one of those animals that has triple the amount of colors in their what is it? Rods? Retinas? I really should know that by now. And process the world in that way. Oh my gosh, it'd almost be overwhelming.
It's interesting you brought up an octopus because what an amazing creature. Not only the colors that they're able to deal with, see, but change. And then the fact that they can taste with their feet,
Yes,
and their legs. I mean,
exactly.
there's this, the range of senses that come at them. The reason I asked the question is because I've talked to, over the last year or so, I've talked with a lot of teachers who have now got their students, partly inspired by you, gotten their students journaling and drawing, and to try to engage them more deeply in the world around them and bring alive that verb noticing. I wonder if we have to give people permission to imagine more.
I think it's not even necessarily permission. I think um, it's encouraging them to remember what they loved as kids. I don't know anybody who didn't love picking up a crayon or a pencil. Um, when we all first learned to write, I don't know about you, but everything was in capital letters. So it seemed like we're shouting into the world, like, my name is Amy, I saw a pine cone, I mean, it's just that mimics a kid's joy and excitement over and exclamations. Something happens in middle school or high school where suddenly it's not cool anymore to notice things or it's not cool to exclaim. I don't know, for some people, it doesn't matter what people say. But I think like what I do in my, especially in my nature writing classes, is that I don't have to teach them as so much as I have to encourage them to remember what they all used to do, and to give them a space in which to do it where it's not only going to be um, championed, and yes, there's a grade to it, but their teacher is going to be so genuinely excited to see what they notice about the world around them, and how do they make sense of the world in their journals, and what are they thinking about here? It's so extraordinary. It's one of my greatest. It's such a privilege, and I don't take it lightly. And I could just see how it changes their whole body. It changes their face. It changes how they carry their shoulders. Um, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but being outside with maybe grumpy frat boys here in the South who are like, "Oh, I'm just taking this class for credit," and then before you know it, you see them exclaim at a catalpatre, or you see them taste a red bud, which is edible, right off the tree and exclaim to the, oh, I can't wait. I'm going to put these in a salad for my girlfriend, things like that. It's so exciting to see them almost relearn the campus or relearn the outdoors in ways that they all did when they were little, but they kind of forgot or was discouraged or they had to be inside or whatever, things like that. So um, I don't know, this word of permission, uh, I know what you're saying on that, but I don't like it only because um, it for people who have not had that experience to be in one of my classes or to have that practice of journaling as an adult, I don't want them to think, oh, there needs to be certain conditions for me to get outside, or there needs to be certain conditions for me to notice things, when it's really one of the easiest, cheapest forms of art we could possibly do, a composition notebook and a pencil. Literally, we don't need a $15,000 harp to cart it, on wheels, that kind of thing. It's a 50-cent notebook and a pencil, and you don't need to be an artist. All you need to do is just be open and alive to your surroundings.
Do you find that going back to your students, and I'm thinking of this question coming from every teacher I've ever talked to, is it quicker to get back to that joy or to find that joy if you have a student that's never had it versus those who had it and then lost it in their route through teenage years?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's such an interesting question. I don't recall ever in 20 years a student who could not remember. Like, we start off, I don't just throw them in a forest or something. We start off with some memory writing and journaling inside first. I don't recall anybody in 20 plus years who couldn't come up with a memory from the outdoors, picking up an acorn or shoving a whole frog into their pocket, or um, accidentally getting a leech on them when they were, playing in the creek or something like that, or playing in a pond. Um, Everybody I've taught to, thank goodness. Now, I will say one thing I've noticed is that um, the age in which they are outdoors has definitely decreased for sure. Like, I mean, so it used to be when I started teaching 25 years ago, they could point to maybe just like, this is like 20-year-old students. They could point to like 5 years ago, they were outside still like playing kickball at 15. Now, we're talking about like elementary school, like middle elementary school, that they take their memories from the outdoors. And that breaks my heart. So they're still able to conjure it up. So, for example, almost nobody, I'd say the majority of students don't have memories from their teen years outside. That's alarming, and that has definitely decreased in the 20 years. And I 100% put that to cell phones and screens like that. The amount of screens that have gone up has also decreased the time that teens are outdoors. And maybe some of you would be like, "Oh, well, duh." Well, for people who don't hang around college students, that's it's alarming to note that, because, like I said, 20 years ago, that was not the case. In fact, many of my students are saying, "Oh, I was just outside, last month or last week," or something like that. Now I'm asking students to recall memories from their elementary school years because they have no memories from middle school to high school outside. They're always indoors on that. And that's a little bit sad for me, but we work with, I try to meet everybody where they're from. And then I have kids whose families has always been outdoors, are always hiking, and even spring break, they're going on a family vacation adventure. So it's okay. But the majority of them don't have memories from high school or middle school. And so I wonder about that, what the next 5 years, 10 years is going to bring.
Hmm. Now, that's an interesting question, because to ask ourselves, I guess, because there's a saying that we should meet people where in terms of nature education, environmental education, we need to meet people where they are, not where we want them to be.
Yeah.
But if where they are is so removed from where we want them to be,
Absolutely.
and connected, that's a really interesting and disturbing trajectory.
Yeah. But I will say it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long for them to capture that joy again, that kind of kid-like wonder, and within all across the board, I would say 100%. Um, our first walks outside, you could see the joy, and nobody's reaching for their phone immediately. I prepped them like, hey, this is not a time to take a selfie in front of a redbud tree, but this is time for just really, really looking at it, really noticing thing. I kind of set them on a competition, like, what do you notice about this particular tree or these clouds that nobody else in your class will notice? So they can't just go like, oh, it's white, or oh, this is pink. They have to really notice something. And that gets them looking at a tree like 2 inches from their face, to sniffing the tree, to really, gently putting their hands on the tree. So it doesn't take long, but it does make me wonder about, for writing, what do you, if you're thinking about memory, my memories when I was in third grade, like you mentioned, are very different and maybe not as clear and sharp as the ones from when I was 18, or 16, things like that. I was still very much outside and climbing trees at 16. Um, and what happens when a kid doesn't remember doing that at all? Or if they do, that was maybe when they were 10 or 6 or something, like that.
Just a slight shifting gears,
Mhm.
thinking about the language and engaging other people in it. One of the things that I noticed in your writings is you're very religious about using scientific terms and words.
Mm.
And where do you think that plays a role in our connection to nature?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I just believe in knowing the names of things, and part of that is, well, it's twofold. My hope is that, and I believe in knowing the names of things for names of people, and getting to know. I think the more we get to know about people that are different than us, the less they seem scary, that kind of thing, and the less they seem like that they're easily to be dismissed. Same thing, look back to my favorite scientist, Rachel Carson, and I'm gonna butcher this quote of hers, but I love it so much. The gist of it is, the more, and I think I could do it, the the more we get to know about the inhabitants of the earth, the less appetite we shall have for destruction. And I love it's so true because it's so, my hope is that if you know that there's a patch of forest out there that is the nesting grounds for indigo buntings, which are one of my favorite birds. Do they have those in Portland? I don't know, indigo buntings.
No, but if we do, every birder in the area will flock to that
Yeah.
spot to see
Yes, I
it.
mean, it's the
It's
brightest turquoise blue. It's just shocking to see them in a tree. It's like, they're like little just decorations. They're so precious. So people, I don't know how you could raise that. If you knew anything about indigo buntings, I don't know how you could raise that forest to put up a car wash or something, that kind of thing. Um, and my hope is that, and if you knew that those indigo buntings are part of an ecosystem that includes Luna moths and, blue-tailed salamanders, I just, even more so, I would think that you would want to protect that patch. And my hope is that if you knew the names of children on the other side of the planet, and if you knew that they were their parents' whole world, you would not want to bomb them. You would not want to kill them. So it's so connected on that. It's easy to say, "Oh, that's trees there. I want to make a new a new bank or something," which just happened in our town. Um, It's easy to say, oh, that's collateral damage because you don't know any of the names. You don't know the names. You don't know what they mean to that community. And when it all comes down to it, we're all connected in this community. So if we don't know parts of it, it's like not knowing parts of your body. If you don't know how your stomach is supposed to feel or how your heart is supposed to feel, or if like your pinky toe is actually the thing that gives you balance and you're like, oh, who cares about the pinky toe, whatever. I mean, it's a crazy metaphor, I know, but you realize, oh, that's actually a giant part of my body. The children on the other side of this planet are also part of my community. Indigo buntings and Luna moths and all the inhabitants of leaf litter, those are all part of my community as well. So yeah, it's super important for me to get not only in my writing, but my students to get to know the names of clouds, the names of at least 5 trees on campus that they didn't know before.
It's interesting that you should hit on that topic of children's names across on the other side of the planet or people, because your work does have a globalness to it. You talk about there are places and place names across this planet that appear in your work. It's interesting because we talk a lot, I think, in our connection to nature, our connection to the environment. I even hesitate in using those words because the vocabulary alone makes them sound like something separate from us.
Sure.
Disconnected from us. But that sense of connection to place, whether the place is your body, as you said, your pinky toe, or it's the town you live in, or the ecology you live in, or the continent you live on. I mean, I've asked this of a lot of people, and I think we still stumble with how to get there. But how do we connect more strongly to sense of place, so that those things resonate with us, so that we ensure that indigo bunting has a home. It becomes second nature to it. It is our second nature. We don't have to think, oh gosh, I gotta save that. It's like we just wouldn't even think of destroying it. How do we take that step?
I think, and this is what I think groups and organizations and pedagogy kind of miss, and so it might be a little woo, but I don't think so. My students don't think so. It kind of goes back to asking the questions like, what do you love? What do you love? And oftentimes my students haven't had anybody ask them that when it doesn't involve, like, oh, that cute sorority girl over there or something like that. No, what do you love on this planet? Do you love the smell of rain? Do you love a certain pull of clouds? You've got to tell me what bird you love, that kind of thing. What trees do you love? If you start with love and remember what you loved as a kid, what maybe has changed, what has stayed the same, and go from there, I think activism is born from love rather than fear or anger. Like, that's what I've noticed is that there's so many things out there, and, there's room at the table for everybody. There's books and documentaries that showcase, here's what's going to happen if you don't recycle, or here's what's going to happen if you don't do XYZ. And it ends up being a little scary. Maybe it causes rage. Those are all good, human emotions. But I don't know about you, but after a while, I'm wanting to hide under a weighted blanket after a while, because it's like, oh, it's hopeless then, and we're doomed. My activism, and I think everybody's activism comes from wanting to fight for what we love and want to, and it also like helps weed out the chaff of like, oh, you don't think the moon is beautiful right now? Like, I don't know how we could ever be dating over, I don't know how you're not just gobsmacked over the blue of an indigo bunting, that kind of thing. Like, and you're going to tell me like, you're going to tell me, you're going to expect me to, I don't know, have a serious conversation with you? It sounds so silly like that, but it's a way to kind of figure out like, hey, we could build together because we love together as well. And I'm not saying everybody has to love the same exact things. Let me backtrack that. We do not need to love the same exact things. But in terms of environmental education, it's, I don't know, I find it really easy to get students of all ages, elementary through, jaded grad students, I find it easy to get them to admit that they are in awe of something or they're astonished by something, because I think love is contagious. And that's the part that sounds cheesy and woo woo, but I don't know. I invite anybody to come into my classroom and tell me they don't also love whatever it is we're going to be talking about that day. I just feel like uh, if you allow yourself to be open, that's what I just asked my students. Allow yourself to be open to see what it is. How do you move through this world? What makes your heart beat a little bit more? What is pretty to you? Where do you find beauty? And even if maybe if it's gross to anybody else, but where are you curious? Where do you find astonishment? And start from there. Maybe it's a certain kind of spider. Maybe then that'll encourage you to do a dig deeper into what kinds of spiders are here in the South. Maybe there's one that's not so scary. Maybe there's one that's just so intriguing and awe-inspiring. I don't know. I just feel like our activism that lasts is born of love. And I guess going back to I want to touch on what you said about place. For me, it's easy because we moved around so much. And so I couldn't be tied to place. And what I could do though was be tied to, oh, here's this incredibly weird shaped cactus, or here's a green tree called the Palo Verde. I called it an incredible Hulk tree when I was little, that kind of thing, with green bark, green branches, everything like that. Um, when I moved to Kansas, it was a catalpa tree. Those inhabitants were also friends. And I don't know, I was just taught by my parents to treat them as such, treat them with reverence. One day you might come across them again. And sure enough, sixth grade, I knew all catalpas. And then when I first moved here to Mississippi, the first tree on campus that I saw was a giant catalpa, and I had not seen that since. And it was so beautiful to see, oh, hi, old friend, that kind of thing. So, of course, I love place so much, but it's the inhabitants that, for lack of a better word, feel like family or feel like old friends, I guess.
It was interesting when I was going through that you should say that and talk about your moving around and all those inhabitants. I was thinking about you and how you've this world that's been built around you and with you. And I was thinking how much I think lives are like tumbleweeds.
Yeah.
Tumbleweeds are an invasive in the southwest of the U.S., a Russian thistle.
That's
But
right.
But what we think of tumbleweeds is not so much the bush, but it's all the things it collects as it
Yes,
tumbles
that
across
it
a
snags
landscape.
up. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it really is so much like what I feel like you express in your writing is
Mm,
that collection of things
yeah.
that has stuck to you and you've
It
gravitated
shaped me.
towards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you see a tumbleweed at the end of a storm or whatever, it looks like an entirely different beast. In some ways, sometimes it looks like a beast, gathering up seeds and scraps of fabric and things like that. I'd like to think that I'm a little more stationary now, that kind of thing. But at the same time, we all have, even if you've never moved away from the place where you grew up, my hope is that everybody has an adventure of going to the grocery store could be an adventure, new people coming into your town and what they bring to you. My point is that we should all be changed or be open to being changed by the inhabitants of this planet. We're not just, and I distrust, the things that I distrust are leaders or anybody who wants us to be in this bubble. Stay with the people who believe the same thing as you. Stay in the bubble of people who look like you, who love like you, who move like you. Um, that's the most unnatural thing in the world, actually. That's the most unnatural thing. Um, Plants and animals know that if they did that, they would die. They would literally die. So I don't trust any leader that is like, oh, look out for yourself and pick yourself up by your bootstraps. That's not natural. And that should signal to everybody a red flag. They don't have your best interests in mind. They want you to not thrive. because the animal and plant world only thrives when we're all connected together. So it's so strange that any leader should tell us to look out for our own, that kind of thing.
What is poetry?
That is something that people have made dissertations on and arguments, that kind of thing. I will go back to the famous maxim, the best words in the best order. And what I would just not to be too pithy on that, I would say poetry is an image with attention to music and breath. When I'm reading prose, sometimes there could be pauses, there could be hesitations, but I'm not dependent on that. Poetry, you're dependent on the line break, on the suspense of what comes next, things like that. And I expect a little bit of musicality. It should be fun. I expect this in all of writing that captures me, but in poetry, for sure, I love hearing it out loud. I love the crackle and pop on your tongue when you say it out loud. I love reading other people's poems out loud. I mean, it's so magical to me that you could take 26 letters and feel like you're traveling without ever leaving your chair.
Hmm. Speaking of hearing it out loud, would you mind reading something for us?
Yes. Oh, that's a great that I just softballed that up there. That's a great transition there. Great. Oh, you did that. You pulled the puppet strings. Just I got right into position there. All right. This is actually the opening poem from my new collection, Night Owl. And I hope it sets the tone for everything in terms of like why night, why I write poems with this overall arching setting of night. Not every single poem is about nighttime, but it has the moods of night, and why I like working at night as well. And a nocturne is a poem that simply takes place at night. So this is Nocturne for Dark Things. I do my finest listening in the dark. My best friend has always been ink, and she lets me talk so much at night. One of the marvels of my life, an alphabet. A whole green and mossy world can be made and remade from just 26 dark curlicues. Here's more dark. Sometimes birds sleep tucked under a giraffe's dusky armpit, and sometimes fungi fatten only at night. When I was a kid, I used to worry over so many bugs and moths slamming into our windshield. My sons have never known that concern, which is another kind of worry. But dark marvels still bloom and snick the soil, swim the oceans and air, and even on the moon, wide flat plains called seas, lakes, marshes, and bays named joy, named sorrow, named hope, named nectar, named softness, named serpent, named stickiness, named tranquility, named clouds, named sleep, and my favorite, named love.
Yeah, wow, it's really beautiful to hear it read out loud.
Oh, thank you.
What's so interesting in going through Night Owl is I love the night, but it brings such great fear to so many people. What does the night reveal that day can't? And what
Yeah.
what does night reveal that day hides?
Mm. You know, I love that question. You're exactly right because, so often, I mean, it's the trope of horror movies is all these terrible, terrible nightmarish stuff happens at night, that kind of thing. And yet, when you go back to ancient Greece, the classical poets, they viewed night as transformation and magic. So any of the shape shifting happened, but not terror. It was like a beautiful, like one would hope to be transformed, or, one would hope to be visited um, by celestial beings, that kind of thing. And so it was like more of an excitement, more of a place for magic and possibility. I think for me, and I always felt this way. This isn't just because I became a mom. I felt this way ever since, staying up late and doing my first scribblings in college uh, when I was a chemistry major, and I didn't know what the world held. I was pretty sure it was not going to be chemistry, but I was up late journaling, and I would never call those things poems. But night for me is like a loosening of um, the mind, but it's also a time where everything slows down, especially now. It Nighttime demands quiet. It demands like contemplation in ways that I know that the overwhelming majority of my contacts are not going to be pinging my phone. I'm not going to be getting even emails coming through. And so even though I'd like to think I'm better than that and just, hey, Aimee, don't check your phone, don't check your email, just the possibility that, my son my eldest who's off in college might need me or something like that, will have my phone clear nearby, or my parents might need me. At night I find it especially productive because that's when I can actually contemplate. It's not like there's something that's calling me to the next thing, or the next global disaster, or the next worry, or the next. I could actually have some contemplation time and kind of make sense of the world through my own journaling and stuff like that. So for me, it was actually a logical step, not a shift in anything. It was more like, oh, I'm going to lean into this, because I also never hear all I hear of parents is, "Oh, I'm up early," that kind of thing, and it always made me feel guilty because I'm not up early at all. And just in case there's other parents out there, or anybody who feels guilty for being kind of a little bit more awake, more ready to make art and do work. I wanted to kind of gather and lean into that rather than hide it away, or be ashamed that I'm lesser than or something like that.
Yeah, I find the night to be amazing. Some of my best writing that I've ever done, I think, is oddly is on airliners at 39,000 feet at night, flying across this planet where
Yeah.
everybody else goes to sleep on the plane, and
Yes.
you can just sit there and look out that window at this amazing planet, and from that altitude, it's like you think about the smallest things on the
Oh,
planet. You
yeah.
think about, it's like looking out at a microscopic world
Mhm.
from 39,000 feet.
Oh my
It's
gosh, yeah.
it's
That's one of my favorites, is airplane riding at night as well. Thinking about just even the phases of the night help me structure the book, because there's different tones and moods and emotional registers too. Just a little offhand example I give my students: if you're about to break up with someone and you do it at, say, you know, crepuscular twilight time, say like 5:30, it's a very different tone or mood than, say, meeting someone in the forest at 2 in the morning to break up with them. Like, everything's charged differently. And I really wanted to kind of capture that as well, so that people aren't thinking of just one thing with night, that you could see there's different tones and moods tonight as well.
Normally we end the podcast with, what is the world you want? And I think your writing speaks to the world we want. So I ended up was thinking about, well, what would be a final question I would want to ask you? And I actually came up with three, which could
Oh,
probably
great.
be a whole new
I
podcast
know.
of its own. But one of them. So I'd like to step through each of them if we can. And
Okay.
the first one is, what would you tell someone if they were going to walk out in the night for the first time tonight, in their backyard, a city street, a forest, where it happens to be? What is one small thing you would ask them to be, again, going back to that word, noticing?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love it. It's just right up my alley. An easy answer for that is sound. I would want them to just, and it doesn't take anything. Again, 50-cent notebook. You do not need advanced degrees. It's just being aware and alive to sound in particular at night. Now, right now where I am in North Mississippi, we have the spring peepers out. And so it's like a little teeny chorus. Do you have that too in Portland? Oh, I love it.
We have a few frogs that in the last few years have started, but nothing like you have with the
Oh my
peepers.
gosh,
And
it's just such a beautiful chorus, and it's almost haunting. I'm not even a huge frog fan, but I love the spring peepers, just knowing that they are shimmying themselves out of the mud, out of torpor, and they are calling out to each other. So there's that. But about 3, 4, about maybe a month ago, Oxford is hard to believe because Oxford was encased in ice. They made the New York Times and CNN headlines because specifically Oxford, Mississippi was encased in 2 inches of ice and it shut down everything. I mean, we did not have electricity. We did not have running water. Some people didn't have running water for 2 weeks. Um, I have been in Western New York, and we have never our campus was shut down for 2 weeks. I have never been in, 25 years in academia, I've never had a campus shut down for 2 weeks. So when I say it was bad, it was bad. But the one thing I miss so much about it is how quiet it was. Because even I didn't even realize, I lived on the outskirts of town, but I didn't even realize until that moment, and here I'm the noticer. I'm the noticer of all my friends and things like that. Even just electrical wires have a hum and a crackle. So when those are down and those are not conducting electricity, the quiet and the stillness, I could hear someone walking, like a block away because it was so quiet. And then, so there's that. And so at night in particular, I remember going out and thinking, oh, I already turned in this book. I would have like 3 more poems just from no electricity, and just how much you could hear at night. So if you're even out in the country, I would be doing this every night, but now even over the electrical hum and the crackling lines, things like that, I could still hear the spring peepers, but also there's different. I swear I heard it last night when I took the dog out, almost like the yard is breathing, like the mud is moving. We're in a very wet situation right now. We just had torrential rainstorms. I don't know. It's shifting. I think earthworms are doing their business. I mean, there's so much at night. And then soon, it hasn't happened here yet, but soon, you'll be able to hear, I think you'll be able to hear it in Portland as well, the night migration. That's the coolest thing, and I think unless you happen to be awake at that time, you don't realize. About 2 or 3 in the morning here in Mississippi, you'll hear, you won't be able to see them, but you'll hear this "paw, paw, paw, paw," birds calling to each other at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and it just also makes you realize no, you're not alone. The night is never lonesome to me because there's always something stirring. There's the ground moving, even things you can't see, especially things you can't see, show that you're not alone. And instead of disturbing me, it actually, I don't know, there's something so soothing and it reinforces that we're not alone on this planet. That, oh my gosh, whatever I do in the daytime is going to affect things at night, eventually, things like that. If I'm pouring paint thinner on the corner of my garden, I'm not going to have those beautiful frogs, that kind of thing. If I choose to use Roundup in the daytime, I'm not going to have those nighttime bugs that come alive and see moths banging themselves on my screen. And I want all of that. I want all of that life. I think it'd be very spooky if you walk outside and see no life at all. And even for people in the city, there's still at least pigeons or something scurrying around, things like that. I think it would be very spooky if you saw nothing, no animal, no plants moving towards the moon or anything like that. That's what I don't want. So instead of what is the world do you want? That's what the world I do not want. I do not want to have, I don't want to be in a place where you can't see the stars. I don't want to be in a place where I can't hear mud shift from its inhabitants. And I don't want to be in a place where I can't hear animals heralding spring.
Normally, I would say that's a perfect place to end this, but I promised there were a couple more questions.
Oh,
So
yes.
I'm
No.
going to skip one, and
Sure.
I'll just shoot to the last one.
Okay, great.
If poetry could act like a field guide for curiosity, what would you hope people carry with them after reading Night Owl?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's a full-on essay question here. I love it. That's such a good one, Gerry. I think it's almost like it's not a cop-out answer, but it's true. I feel it's truest with this one more than any of my books, is that I hope people see, like, I hope it encourages them, not necessarily, I don't need everybody to go out and start writing poems, although it would be amazing if they did. My hope is that it encourages, this whole book is just one giant love poem to the planet, to my kids, to all of the beloveds in between, what it means to be a daughter, my childhood friends, my life before I got married. This is hopefully like a I'm hoping that this is just an array of different ways to love unapologetically, to not make your love small at all, and to share it with people that are around while you can. And oh gosh, this was the kind of subject that I would roll my eyes in when I was in grad school. I didn't know if I wanted to be married. I didn't really particularly like kids. So it took, there's only certain poems that actually ever opened the door that I was like, huh, that's kind of lovely. Maybe one day, or maybe not, but it's still lovely. I very deliberately ended on motherhood, saying goodbye, to my eldest, that kind of thing. And that was a risky move, but uh, my hope is that you could substitute motherhood to any goodbye of love, and know that it's not truly a goodbye. If it's love, it truly is not a goodbye. It's another shape or form. And I think this is the first time it's the closest to my heartbeat is the closest to the surface of my skin in this book, because I put all of myself in there. Daughter, wife, mother, friend, um, and just person who is in love with this planet. And so my hope is really that you see this unabashedly, not apologizing for anything. It's so rare that anybody who loves the outdoors showcases a love of pop culture, or their family, or whose partner doesn't annoy them, so they have to be outside all the time, or whose kids are taking up time that they wish they could get back to the desk. That's not who I am, and also it's such a weird thing to put out there in the world for others to see. Like, I did not see the outdoor writers, the people who loved writing about the outdoors. Almost, if they were parents, they never included their family members. They never included humans that they love. And I want to show that you can love both. You can love birds, and you could um, just love your family as well so much, and that you can see that it's not, you don't have to choose one or the other on that. It is one big ecosystem, and I think, again, going back to what I'm saying is, like, activism and how we move towards the future, um, is joining together and sharing what we love. And so I did my part. I'm hoping my readers do their part too and share what they love as well.
I mean, this has been really, really wonderful for
thank you.
everyone involved in the world we want. I mean, I think you express everything that is in the world that most of us want, which is love and noticing.
Thank you. It's so
thank you.
There's such giant concepts, I'm aware, but that's what I love about the poems, is that they can bring you down to specific moments. I'll tell you this, and to educators out there, I would never give an assignment that says, write about noticing and write about love. Go, because I would have biggest writer's block ever. But to get to those universal concepts that you mentioned, write about the specific. So that's what I would say as a craft thing. Be as specific as you can. Be as niche as you want to be. your readers will find you from there, that kind of thing. I mean, I wrote about roller skating um, a man-made form of night, that kind of thing. And those are my true like loves and passions. And as Walt Whitman says, we all contain multitudes, so we don't need to like keep us into one little box.
Yes, and Ed Yong wrote beautifully about we all contain multitudes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So,
I love Ed's work. Yes.
Brilliant. Aimee, thank you so much.
Thank you, Gerry. This was so wonderful, and it's so delightful. It's always delightful. You're the first person I've met this whole season who actually shares my love of nighttime airplane writing. I sometimes feel like I kind of have to hide that away, but now it's so freeing. You can vouch for me on this. It really just loosens up the mind. You could be contemplative in a way that I can't be during the day, honestly. And we need that contemplation. I think when we don't get that contemplation, that's when we feel it in our body. Our shoulders hunch over, our breaths are not as deep. So for me, it's poetry. For me, it's writing at night. But whatever anybody can do to find ways to get to that contemplative part in their lives, go for a walk, anything. We need to do that. That's what makes us human.
Take care, Aimee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I want to thank Aimee for sharing the past hour with us and the art of noticing the magic of all life around us. Noticing that inspired her new work, Night Owl. You can find a link to Night Owl and all of Aimee's work by checking out the accompanying blog and links on our website at NAAE.org/podcast. As you've just heard, environmental education is as multifaceted as the diversity of guests on our podcasts. To explore every element, subscribe to the World We Want podcast. There's a link on our website, or you can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. We'd love to hear from you and hear what you think. If there's an aspect of environmental education you want to know more about, let us know. Email us at podcast@naaee.org. This has been Season 2 of the World We Want podcast. It's a co-production of NAAEE, the North American Association for Environmental Education, in partnership with nonprofit Globio, and is funded by EE 360+. A special thanks to our entire podcast team, Judy Browse, Stacey Pierpoint, Carrie Albright, Jimena Cuenca, and Pippa Cavill. And a special thanks to you for being a part of the world we want. We hope conversations lead you to take action in your own world every day, making it more and more the world we all want. I'm Gerry Ellis. For everyone at the World We Want, join us next time to hear how, together, it's possible to create this magical world we all want. Thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing the World We Want, the NAAEE podcast.